Welcome to the Author Blurb podcast. I'm your host, Eric Maynard. For those who have listened to the show, besides being an author, besides being your host, I'm a pretty good person to listen to. At least I think so. And with that being said, I like to share people that I think are pretty good to listen to as well, authors that I enjoy talking to. And a lot of authors, the ones that are more than happy to talk, they have a lot to say, and most times they'll keep you on your toes and keep you interested talking about their books. So with this episode, I'm talking with Gordon Byron. Interesting conversation about his two series. I think you're going to enjoy them, and depending on if you're into rom-coms or the science fiction, he has something for both areas, and to me, they sound interesting. So I want you to enjoy the show. I want you to find his profile, learn more about him, and it's on authorblurb.com, where also you can find other people's profiles. You can find people who have different books that you might be interested in. You can find also the video feeds of where you can watch the videos if you're not watching it already. You can find where the audios are being shared at. You can listen to the audios on the website as well. To boot, you can also find articles like the one that Gordon wrote that is on authorblurb.com. So enjoy, go, find all the different information on him, the other authors, and enjoy. I'm personally hoping you find somebody that you think is that author you really love and you want to share. And if you're sharing, share this show with people. Tell people about it, rate it, review it. The more you do that, hopefully the more people say, hey, I want to listen. And you can be that person to see, I showed you this show. It's great. Eric is a fun person to talk with or listen to. And the more we do that, the more we grow and the happier I am. So if you want to make me happy, or if you just want to look like you know something other people don't, share and tell people about it. In the meantime, authorblurb.com, and enjoy this show. Gordon was fun to talk with, and I think you're going to enjoy him as well, like I said. So thank you. So I'm here with Gordon Byron. We're here to discuss his two series that he written, and one's a rom-com thriller type of series, if I'm thinking correctly. Instead of me going through trying to describe it all, because it sounds like it has a lot of complexities into the stories as well as trying to understand it all. Gordon, thank you for being here. If you can go into a bit about yourself so everyone can get to know you and then talk about your books as well, I'll be quite appreciative.
Yeah, I've come from a background as an engineer. I worked in the environmental sciences industry. So I worked in that industry for about 8 years. I really love science and nature. And so a lot of my books, or at least the Superspecies book, sort of centers on nature and the effect of nature, nature being like the ultimate reality, the ultimate gauge of truth. So that's one of that nature doesn't need to be changed, that it is what it is, and we need to keep it that way and fall in line with that. I also have always written books since I was a very young age. I've always been interested in writing and sort of communicating my ideas. I've always had these ideas in my head that I wanted to get out and to other people and have people react to them. I love to travel a lot of the time because I think it helps my writing. It helps me to become more of a, citizen of the world, so to speak, and more open to new ideas and new cultures and new ways of looking at things. So I really love to travel and to experience new environments and talk to people in different environments and get an idea of their different ways of approaching problems and dealing with the challenges of life, I guess.
All right, and then you also have a Paul and Sandy series that you wrote too. Mm-hmm. So let's start off with the first one, the one that's environmental. How did you pronounce it again?
The Superspecies.
Superspecies. Okay. So superspecies. Obviously, I haven't had enough coffee yet this morning. The superspecies. So you said that's all about environmental, about basically nature and how we need to fall in line and work with nature together. What
Essentially,
kind?
go
What's
ahead.
that? Oh, I
Go
was
no.
going to
Go.
say, what in what sense do you mean in that way? Are you saying it's a book? Is it a book of like how more of a science book, or I thought it was a non or a fictional book that you written? So where does it lead us to? So if I'm reading it, what do I expect the story to be about?
The story is about a group of scientists that create a new species or a species within a species that develops intelligence much faster, and they start to rebel against their makers and against the human control over, the earth and and them, all the animals and the natural environment. So they start to develop an intelligence, and they start to rebel against human domination of the planet, but also the people who made them, the people who genetically engineer them to be more intelligent. So what ends up happening is that people break into two different camps. You have people that want to destroy them, and then people that want to preserve them because they represent an evolutionary development. And so they end up clashing heads over that. The government scientists that work on the project that try to terminate them are met with environmental groups and animal rights groups that want to preserve them. So there's this clash, and there's this violent clashes between them. And there are a lot of philosophical differences between them because, no one's ever seen an evolutionary development like this before. And they're very smart too. They end up outsmarting the human beings that try to hunt them. They ambush them frequently while they're being hunted by different means. So it's kind of a don't mess with nature when nature is trying to assert itself, is one of the themes, I guess you could say.
Okay, so now you said that they were a species created by scientists, this and that.
Mm-hmm.
So is that so when I hear that, and this is just my thinking, so when I hear that, my first thought is it's not fully nature, but it's mankind manipulating nature and it coming back and biting them in the rear end.
Right, that's true, and that's one of the themes of the story. But once the spark is lit, and human beings do their thing to push evolution in a certain direction, then they don't know which direction it will go. So it becomes nature takes over. The scientists light the initial spark, and then nature takes over. So you're correct in that, in what you're saying. You're absolutely correct. But then they have no control over where it goes from there, and it ends up turning against them, which, I guess the lesson is, when you create something new or when you play with fire, you really don't know what's going to happen. A human being can start a fire, obviously, and then it can destroy the person, him or herself, right? Because they don't know what's going to happen from there on out.
So what is the species? Did you have like a specific species that you discussed that it goes off of, like an insect or a mammal, or like what type? Is it a large species, a small species? Just to try to get a feel of the challenges that might be there, because different size species would cause different types of challenges and different evolutional appearances.
That's right. I chose bears, and I chose like bears across the world. So grizzly bears, Kodiaks, black bears, sloth bears, all
the bears that basically that people don't really see very often.
right.
So, all right. So with the bears, do they really, I guess, dig into do they experiment and scientists make all the bears or test it on all the bears at one time, or how does it kind of mutate through the different species of bears?
They initiate changes in all the different types of bears, and then once they've done that, then it starts to steamroll it or snowball, and it starts to develop on its own. And then as the bears, as they start to realize in different countries, whether it's South America, because bears exist all over the world, pretty much
Right.
in any environment, so they're very adaptable, and polar bears too. So they're able to adapt and overcome, and realize that human beings are controlling them and destroying their environment, manipulating them in a certain way, and they start to rebel. And bears are very intelligent anyway. They're I did a lot of study on bears, and they are some of the most intelligent creatures on Earth. Up there with like porpoises and other monkeys and other intelligent species. They're very, very close. Plus the fact that you can add the dramatic aspect of them being able to carry out acts of violence, and against some enemies, any beings or creatures that they view as enemies. So it adds the dramatic feature as well.
Yeah, I was going to say a bear could definitely do some damage. I've seen some up close throughout my lifetime, more than I'd like, to say the least.
Yeah.
So I can say what I've seen of them, I definitely don't want to mess with them. So
No.
that makes sense. So where's this all take place? Is it a global setting when you write about it, or is it set in United States, Canada? Because you've been, I think, the information you've told me and what's in your profile on authorblurb.com is you've been to Europe, you've lived in Europe, you lived in Asia, here in North America. So where do you set all this at?
It's all set in Colorado, in what's called White River National Forest, which is near some of the major ski resorts in Colorado. But it's kind of a not so well-known forest in Colorado. It's called White River, and I also did a lot of study on that area to write the story. And I start with and there aren't a lot of grizzly bears in that area. So one of the first scenes that starts off, most of the grizzly bears are generally speaking up north in like Montana or even in Canada, because they're
Right.
very, very, very reluctant to be close to human beings. Unlike black bears, black bears will eat trash can, eat stuff out of trash cans right in their cities and towns.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the scenes starts out with grizzly bears being in White River National Forest, kidnapping, causing an accident and kidnapping a young girl. So I guess I played off of that sort of King Kong sort of aspect in a certain way, that kidnapping the girl, and the massive creature, kidnapping, and then it ends up this wild chase, through the forest. The bears are, the hunters are trying to find the bears. They're trying to rescue the girl, but at the same time, there's a war going on between the bears, because some of them are not super species and they don't understand what's going on, and they see this violent, one bear from up north taking, this extreme measure and, leading these, creating this huge commotion, and they want to destroy this bear because, it's what he's doing is out of control, and it's out of the bounds of nature as far as they're concerned. So it's a battle not only between the human beings trying to find the girl, the young girl they kidnap, and the family that they force off the road, but it's also a battle. It's an infighting battle between the bears themselves, the ones that are super intelligent, and the ones that aren't, the ones that are just regular bears, not really knowing what's going on and wanting to destroy the outlying, animal, the outlying creature.
All right. And that's the first one. I thought I saw on Amazon as well that there's a second book in that series. Does the second one follow the first, or is it a take on a different location in a different situation?
It's in the same location. The Superspecies Part 2 is in the same the same locations, because it deals with, but it goes from Colorado to Washington, D.C., with references to South America and other parts of the world where, they're in communication with scientists that are also familiar with the superspecies theory, it's called, which is the more advanced, animals. But the Superspecies 2 takes up the story and deals a lot with the human conflicts with the groups that want to destroy the animals because they're so dangerous, because they're very crafty. They are killing hunters that try to locate them and exterminate them. And then the other groups that want to save them, that want to preserve them because they are this evolutionary development, man-made or not. They don't all know it's man-made. Some of them just believe it's a natural phenomenon and they don't understand it. But so you have these two groups fighting it out. You have groups that are cordoning off entire national parks and trying to exterminate these bears because they're extremely dangerous and they're threatening campers and hunters and poachers and whoever comes along. And then you have the ones that are surrounding these national parks that are cordoned off by government officials and government troops, and they are so you have this war going on. They're surrounding these parks and protesting and trying to sneak into the park and create commotion and diversion. So you have a battle royale going on between the two opposing sides.
Right. Well, that sounds like it would definitely keep you on the edge of your seat trying to follow it and trying to understand which side you're going to root for, because I guess depending on your point of view will depend on who you feel is the good guy or the bad guy. So
I would like people to be able to sympathize with both sides, because I think I didn't want it to be like a simple choice of, these guys are the good guys and these guys are the bad guys. Because, in reality, they both have a point. They both have a good point, and they're both human beings with their own, particular biases or points of view, and they both have, logical arguments and understandable ideas, logical ideas.
All right. So now, with all that, it sounds like that series is definitely a good book for people into sci-fi, into science and things like that. Did you really research a lot into the science side of it, or is it, I guess it's referred to as hard science when you're trying to use as much accurate science as possible, or did you kind of like just throw some stuff out there? Because I know some readers, they're definitely anal about if it's supposed to be hard science, they want it to be hard science, but if it's just for fun, some readers will be like, oh, well, it's a book, you just let it go.
Yeah, I went into, I have a scientific background. I worked as an engineer for about 8 years. So but I didn't want it to be too scientific, because the theme is more along the lines of nature and the primacy of nature as opposed to the dominion of human beings over nature is kind of one of the underlying themes. So the science is very basic, I guess. Anyone with, I guess, a 101 biology understanding can understand the DNA and the different sequences within DNA and how that can influence behavior. You can even see that on the news sometimes. You can see the different gene sequences and how they influence behavior, and if you implant DNA within cells, or you remove DNA or something like that, it can influence behavior. So it's pretty basic science.
Okay, so enough that somebody like me would understand, who my background in science is zilch. So I mean, I've been in the construction side of the world and design and all this for years. So science, unless it's building materials, my science is small. So yeah, that sounds great for somebody, especially like me. Like I said, science is great to know. If I can say, oh, well, that makes sense, then that's fantastic.
I didn't
So
want to alienate people, who are just either not scientific or not interested that much in overly detailed, scientific explanations.
understand, and that's always a good thing to do too. So now let's move on to, and I'm thinking I'm remembering this correctly, Paul and Sandy series, or the
Mhm.
Paul and Sandy series. That starts off, from what I understand of the description of the book, where Paul, the main character, was kind of by the seat of his pants, doesn't really worry about much until some little accident or incident happened.
Yeah.
What? So give me a quick insight on that book, so we can get a bit of understanding about it and go into it.
Sure. Paul Masters is the principal character, and he's like your typical college student, young man who doesn't really care about much. Just doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life. He's irresponsible. He drives a fast car. He's on his way to the university in the morning. He's driving very quickly. He's about to be late for class. So he's maybe not looking at what he's doing, not really paying attention so much, maybe a little angry that he's about to be late and be chewed out by the teacher or something. So he accidentally hits an old woman who's pulling out of her driveway and nearly kills her in the process because he's just going too fast. His car is extremely fast, and so what ends up happening is he looks at her, he realizes what he's done. He sees this older woman, Mrs. Halston, and she's bloody, she's broken up quite a bit. It looks like she may die. The police come, they arrest him. So his life, obviously takes a turn for the worse that morning. And then what he's worried about, what the police tell him, that is, if she dies, then he could be, either in jail for manslaughter or aggravated manslaughter or something. So he's taken to jail. His father comes and bails him out of jail, and so forces him to go to the hospital and visit her and kind of kiss a little butt, and try to see if she's okay, and and at least make his father is kind of a superficial person, so to speak. He's a very big, strong man, but he wants to protect his son, and he has to drag Paul to the hospital to explain that this is what we need to do to to kiss butt to this woman. So if she does survive, maybe she'll be on our side, maybe she won't press charges, what have you. And so he does it. And when they're in the hospital, the elderly lady, Mrs. Halston, the one who's very badly injured, she sees, even though he's reluctant to be there, she somehow sees that he's a caring person, that somehow he really does care about her, and he's really sad about and feels guilty about what he did. And she eventually does recover from the accident, so he's not facing manslaughter. He still goes to court for this, and she appears in court on his behalf as sort of a character witness on her own behalf, and helps him out. So he actually does get doesn't get in as much trouble as he could have otherwise, because she survives, and because she sort of saw something in him, a spark, a sense of caring, a sense of guilt and remorse in him, and she came to his aid. She felt that he was someone worth saving, as older people do. Sometimes they see things that other people, younger people, don't see.
Right.
They have a certain sense about them, and she sees that. She comes to his aid. He ends up getting a very light slap on the wrist, so to speak. And this changes him too, because in his view, as a young man, as a young university student, a young punk, his thought was, everyone's selfish, everyone's out for themselves. All my friends, they'll get away with whatever they can get away with. They'll take advantage of whoever they can. The world is this egocentric place. And then and this changes his view entirely, about things, and he starts to think differently about, him and his girlfriend. They're on the rocks. They drink too much. They party too much. They're, You know, they may do a little bit of, you know, illegal things as well. And you know, and this kind of changes me. Thinks, you know, maybe not everyone in the world is the way that I thought they were. And maybe, you know, people can actually reach out to each other. Maybe people can actually help each other. And it made, you know, this woman made me feel good because she saw something in me. So maybe, you know, maybe I'm not so bad. Maybe my girlfriend, who I can't stand, is not so bad. Maybe, you know, the world as I see it is not the way it is. So kind of puts him on a different course, even with his girlfriend.
All right. So do they tend to, or in the story, are they going to basically work through, because it's a rom-com, I think it said, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's, I'm assuming the whole accident in court happens in the first portion of the book.
Right.
So is the old lady that's hit, is she throughout the book as well? Does he still interact with her? Is she become a main character or somebody that kind of fades off while he's trying to become a better person and then dealing with everything with his girlfriend?
No, she, Mrs. Halston and Mr. Halston, they actually do appear throughout the book. So, certainly throughout the first book, and then after Paul and Sandy, they get married. You know, I don't want to give away the whole story, but they end up,
Right.
You know, they end up showing up to the wedding. Mr. and Mrs. Halston end up showing up to the wedding, and throughout the book, they, you know, Paul and even Sandy starts to realize that, you know, it was these two older, you know, people that changed their lives, that put them on a you know, a better course in life. You know, even the fact that they had never thought about getting married before, you know, because it seemed like, oh no, you know, that's what older people do, that's what stupid people do, or it's
Right.
prison or something. And they start to see this older couple and how they interact and how they're very happy still, and they've been together a long time. You know, they cared about them enough to put them on a different course in life. So it really changes everything for them. You know, they really hated each other. You know, Paul and Sandy, to begin with, they couldn't stand each other. They were breaking up. She ends up, you know, going out with another guy, a jock, who ends up to be, you know, a superficial jerk who just, you know, cheats on her and whatever. And she starts to realize that, you know, maybe Paul is the only one who has a different mindset, who's one that I can have a real relationship with. So it all centers around the influence of these two older people. So it's the older generation teaches the younger generation something that they wouldn't otherwise ever know, or wouldn't otherwise ever realize personally and, you know, emotionally, psychologically, if they didn't have this, you know, really direct, really dramatic, tragic experience.
All right. So with that, and to me, I understand the older generation always teaches the younger. It's just usually, and I can account to even when I was much younger, we always think we know better when we're young.
Right.
So they always say youth is wasted on the young. So, but with that being said, where did you pull this story from, in the sense of, was this something that you've seen through your past? Is this something that
Yes.
affected you somewhere that you brought in? Where did all this come from?
It comes from, it's a combination of different personalities, like most of, I guess, most of my stories, and probably a lot of, I imagine a lot of authors do this. You draw from different personalities, like maybe, you know, a football coach who was older, who taught you, you know, certain things, and then maybe a sixth grade teacher who believed in you and you know, when no one else did, and, you know, taught you something. So it's a combination of, you know, of a sixth grade teacher, a football coach, and you know, kind of put into one character with all those different traits and all those different lessons that they, but it's all in the body of one person, and all these different influences throughout my life, you know.
All right. So now there's, if I'm remembering correctly, there's 3 books in the Paul and Sandy series.
Mm-hmm.
And the Superspecies have 2 books. Are you expanding on those any, or are you looking at a different series to start?
The Superspecies will be 3 books is what the plan is. Now, it may turn out to be 4 books. I may write a prequel to it on how the process came about, how the actual development of the species came about. If I feel that it will add to it. So it will be 3 books for Superspecies, and the Paul and Sandy series may continue for, it could go on. I'm thinking about at least 4 books, but maybe 6 books.
All right.
Because they'll travel all over the world. Another thing that will be initiated by their experience with the older couple, because they had traveled all over the world. They had been all over the world, and she starts to, regale them with stories about Germany and Austria and these places that they never would have thought of going in Europe, even Asia. Maybe teaching in Asia, or so that these are things they never would have thought of before if they hadn't run across this couple. So and it can continue in different ways. So I'm thinking maybe 4 books, maybe 6 books.
All right. So that sounds interesting. So is some of these different locations, because like I said, I saw that you lived in Europe and Asia as well. Is some of these locations places that you've known personally, or are they just locations that you wish you would have got to visit?
Yeah, there'll be both. There'll be a combination of places that I've been, that I have personal experiences with in Asia and Europe, but also places that I've read about, and like you say, places that I wish to go sometime in the future. But I've heard a lot of stories from other people that have been there, and I draw upon that experience and maybe extend it out a little bit and elaborate on that a little bit.
All right. Well, perfect. So with that, it sounds like we've dove into the books that you currently have out and what you have coming. So
Yep.
with that, I'd like to thank you for being here. And I enjoyed talking with you quite a bit. It was very interesting to learn about your books. So you have a profile on authorblurb.com where I have all the links you've given me, the information so people can find you. Where do you prefer people to go to find you if they want to contact you, if they want to learn more about you? What do you suggest?
They can go to Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I'm working on my own web page now. That's in the process. So Facebook, you can go to Gordon Byron Author. So just like my name, Gordon Byron Author, or Timothy Byron Author on Facebook. You can also go to Amazon, Amazon Kindle, and Gordon Byron, The Superspecies, and Timothy Byron, Young Love, Old Lore. So
all right.
Books. And they're also available in places like Barnes and Noble online, and other major venues, Apple Books, Google Books, so many venues.
All right, perfect. So people can find you wherever they like to get their books from.
Yeah, whatever the preferred platform is, I can be found.
Well, that sounds perfect. So again, I appreciate you being here. I look forward to hopefully talking to you in the future as your books keep coming out and growing so we can keep getting to know more of it. With that being said, this is going to be the end of the conversation for everybody else listening. But like I said, I'm going to talk to you a bit more, so if you can hold on for me, I'd be quite appreciative.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.